This meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals is hereby called to order. This board was established pursuant to Section 519.13 of the Ohio Revised Code by the Anderson Township trustees to provide administrative relief to any person or entity adversely affected by the Anderson Township zoning resolution. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence.
Here.
Mr. Nye.
Here.
Mr. Halpin.
Present.
Mr. Sion.
Here. Thank you for coming to this meeting of the Anderson Township Board of Zoning Appeals. Please be aware that this meeting is audio and videotaped and may be carried live on television. First, I'll outline our procedures. Summary of the appeal is presented by staff, and then the appellant will present its case. Board members may then ask questions of the appellant. After that, all persons supporting the appeal will be permitted to testify, one at a time, after being recognized by the chairman. When those persons supporting the appeal are finished, those opposed to the appeal will then be permitted to testify and or ask questions of the board after being recognized by the chairman. All persons wishing to testify, whether for or against an appeal, may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes unless a board member requests additional time. All testimony is given to the board only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the appellant or anyone else in the audience. The board will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous testimony, they may do so by following the testimony procedures and stating their support of previous testimony. Now, for those who will be presenting any testimony today, will you please stand? Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
None.
Any changes to the meeting minutes from last month?
None.
Any objections? We can approve meeting minutes by unanimous consent?
Yep.
Thank you. And would the staff please read the report for case 16-2023.
Sir, could I ask you to speak up a little bit? Your mic's not coming through really clearly.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. So this is case 16-2023, BZA. The applicant and property owners are Elizabeth and David Shermer. The location of the property is 1146 Alnetta Drive.
Sorry, that's not correct.
The
other name.
The property owners are Kim and Roger Schaefer.
That is correct. Thank you for that. The PowerPoint is incorrect. The property owners and applicants are Kim and Roger Schaefer. Thank you for that, miss. The request is a conditional use for a short-term rental at the property of 1146 Alnetta Drive. So the proposed development is a short-term rental for the existing single-family residence. The residence was built in 1953, and Mr. and Mrs. Schaefer purchased the home earlier this summer in June. There were no permits on file for the property as well. Here's a property map of the property in question. You can see it there in the middle, highlighted in red. This is a 2023 aerial of the subjected property and the neighborhood. This is the topography map of the property. It's fairly flat, very slight angle from the residence towards the street from an east to west. Here is images of the property from the road facing the property in the front. Here you can see the driveway on the side of the house. This is the rear yard. There's a Kentucky board fence in the rear yard there. This is the rear yard still. They have a fire pit, not a back patio. This is the side porch angle, and then this is the front porch as well. This was the submission of the plat or the plans for the property. The footprint's not going to change from the proposal that they submitted. So conditional use findings, staff found that the proposed use and development would comply with the spirit and intent of the zoning resolution. the proposed short-term rental would not have any adverse effects upon adjacent properties, public health, safety, and general welfare. The proposed short-term rental will respect natural, scenic, and historic features of significant public interest. The conditional use is in accordance with the following plans, including the comprehensive plan. And here it highlights different portions of the plan that it is in accordance with. And then the conditional use findings associated with short-term rentals. There's 7 conditions associated with the short-term rentals. It was found to be compliant with these 5 listed in front of you, in addition to, or these 4, 1, 2, okay, 5, and then there's 3 on the opposite page, so it's 8 conditions in total, not 7. And then these are the conditions without the additive text, straight out of our zoning resolution, the criteria that we will be considering when hearing this case. And there's the other 4. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions for staff?
I do have a question. We've had maybe half a dozen or so short-term rentals come up over the last year, give or take. We've consistently applied conditions that there be a local property manager, that there be some kind of cameras or some kind of mechanism through which someone can kind of keep control even when they're not there. I guess my question generally is, are those conditions working? Have we seen issues in the township with short-term rentals so far? Do we know?
Excuse me, I'm not aware of any issues of the last year or so of properties that we've approved. So I'm not aware of anything. I'm not sure if there has been issues. I don't know. But in terms of staff, we haven't had any phone calls or any complaints or anything from the properties that we have approved in the last year or so.
So of the approvals, there haven't been any violations or failure to comply with the conditions we've imposed that have come to staff's attention?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Would the appellants or the appellant's representative please come?
Can I answer that question or not now?
We'll get to everybody, sir.
Okay.
Will the appellant or the appellant's representative please step forward to the podium, state your name, address, and affiliation to the appeal?
Hello, I'm Kim Schaefer, owner of 1146 Alnut Drive.
Is there anything you wish to add?
I just want to add, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I know that I'm an out-of-town person. I live in Denver, Colorado, but I'm from Anderson Township. My mom's here today, and my daughter is here. My husband's family is also from Anderson Township. We met at Turpin, and all of our family still lives here. So the whole goal with this property was that we would have a place where we can come back regularly. We're a family of 4, and none of our family can longer hold us in their house together. So every time we come to town, we rent an Airbnb, and we kind of just got sick of the cost. And a couple of years ago, I had a mother-in-law who was very sick, and we had to come back frequently, and it was very expensive. So this property is going to enable us to visit our family more often, and the financial benefit to us would then be when we're not using it, we can rent it to other families like ourselves. We've no interest to renting it to groups or parties, no interest in having it become a nuisance to the neighborhood. We're from Anderson. We know what it means to live here, and we don't want that to happen. So I think I would just want to make sure that you guys are all aware of our intent with the property, that we are really here for our family so that our children can see their cousins more often. We have 20 family members who live within 10 miles of this house. And even just being here this past week has been really nice, letting my daughter see her cousins a little more often, and her grandma. Thank you.
Any questions?
Nope.
And I see from the packet that you submitted, you'll have a local family member managing the property.
That's
for you?
correct, yes. So Chris Schaefer, it will be our property manager, and then another brother-in-law, Matthew Schaefer, is a handyman, so he'll be kind of our on-call triage for that sort of thing. You did ask about how we will manage it. We have 3 cameras set up around the exterior of the property. intentionally away from our neighbors, but covering the perimeter of our property so that we're aware. We also have the mechanism to enter the property as a keypad that has a unique code where we can store up to 250 codes. So we will know exactly who enters based on the code. Every person will have a different code, and we'll know who goes in the house and who leaves the house. And then in addition, in terms of keeping the house well maintained, we signed a 1-year long contract with Landers Lawn Care to make sure the grass stays cut and trimmed and properly. And part of the cameras is to make sure that that actually happens. And then finally, we'll be able to control the temperature control remotely. So when people are not there and when they're there, we can make sure that it's not getting up to 200 degrees in the house or the pipes are bursting and things like that in the winter.
And where does Chris Schaefer live?
Chris Shaver lives at 1952 Lady Ellen Drive, Sherwood.
And are there any sound monitoring devices inside the house in case the party gets too noisy, too loud?
We looked into that, and we have decided to not do that yet and wait to see if there's a problem. But if that is something that would like to be addressed, then we'd be happy to add that as well. We do have a very strict guest limit and no more than 6 people, and part of the exterior camera is to make sure that we're seeing who enters the house. We don't want to obviously impede upon people's privacy when they're inside the house, but we feel that it's our right to know if they're entering the house.
Is there any minimum stays required?
2-night minimum for now.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of this appeal? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please come forward, sir. State your name, address.
My name's Bob Hesh. I've got a business here in the facility. I'm a CPA. I live at 1088 Alnetta. I'm disturbed by the comments by Chris Cavallero about violations on our street. I've called the police once. I don't have my phone with me, but I can provide across the street from where she wants to set up. They literally have 4 cars parked in their driveway every day, blocking the walkway. One day I was coming home, and a lady with a stroller with 2 kids in front of her, and she comes up to that. I live just past them. I go down to the stop sign, and I turn left into my house. I get my phone out, and I take a picture of her walking down the street with her 2 children in a carrier because she had to, because the street was blocked with traffic, not against it. I called 911, got a hold of the police. They said, stay by your phone. I couldn't. I had other commitments. I left them the details of the situation. No one has called me back. No one. They've been parking 4 cars, blocking the driveway ever since they moved in, and 3 of the cars never move. They may move one out on the street once in a while, but that's about the extent of it.
You're talking about the occupants of this house of 1146?
Across the street from it, I'm relating to his comment that there's never been any complaints. You asked the question, have there ever been any complaints? And I'm saying yes, there are complaints. I've had construction workers across the street from me. The people park in my driveway so I can't get out. Or if I can get out, I might hit their car, and their car is damaged to begin with, so they can just blame it all on me. I had a guy just today who parked across from my driveway, 2/3 of the way off of the street, and 1/3 of the way on the street, while cars were parked on the other side.
Can you remind me what your address is?
1088 Alnetta. 3rd house on the other side, down south of it.
Okay.
I'm 2 doors down beyond that house you're pointing to right there. So when I parked, I could take a picture of that lady walking down the street with her 2 kids in the street until she could get to the corner and get back on. And the 4-car deal has been going on for months. They started to park on the streets, some during the day, and then park inside at night. And now the last few weeks, they've set up a tent in their front yard with 4 or 5 bicycles lined up as if they're for sale, and kids that are under this tent, you know, a 6x6 tent like you take to a football game.
With regards to this house, sir, though, the one that's in question, do you have any complaints?
I'm
concerns?
just saying, how do we control this? We have no control. You're saying you don't get any complaints.
Well,
And my comment
his
is, how do
question-
you control this?
His question was in reference specifically to this house, not to the neighborhood in general.
I have no complaints to this lady and what she wants to do, other than all this stuff about safety. We're dealing with transients. They don't care about the community. They're in for 2 days. They may be really nice people, and they may use their code. Do they have just 2 cars that they're limited to, or can they have 4? Do they bring in 8 people and have a party and block the street up with cars? There's no comments about restrictions on that at all. It's just sound and noise. How many people can live in the house? It's a single, can you have more than 2 people per bedroom?
The appellant was saying that they would limit it to no more than 6 people.
How many bedrooms do they have? So I have the same problems across the street. I don't know how many people live in that house, but it's got to be a lot. And I don't know how you can bless any of this if you can't control it across the street. They're one and the same to me. You brought up the question, and nobody's answered it. You're oblivious to what's going on that street.
Well, we're not here to control that issue. We're here to make a decision on whether or not this request should be approved or not approved.
Well,
As far as the rest of it's concerned, your complaint is with the police department.
so these are the people that found out about this in the last 2 or 3 days. And who should I give this to?
Give it to him.
Again, this proposal. It's nice to make money. It's nice to have someplace you can come to. And it's terrible if you got to pay to go somewhere when you got friends and nobody can take you in. I've got family all over town. If I need to come in and I don't live here, I can provide for them in most cases. So I don't see much merit in that, and I am concerned about the neighborhood. It's spiraling downward because of these types of instances. You're going to let transients come in, and you're going to put monitors up of all sorts, but you have no control, and you have no idea what's going on to people who have lived here for 4 or 5 months. You have no complaints. I filed one with the police, and nothing happened with it. I told him I had a picture of the lady walking down the street with her 2 kids. And he called me twice and then it was forgotten. So he never sent anything over to you. Never commented about the issue at all.
If you could please address the board and not staff.
I'm sorry, you're the person that said that you haven't had any complaints. That's why I'm addressing it to you.
And just going back to this.
I'm
Mr. Nye's
sorry, I
question-
didn't know he wasn't part of the
Well,
board.
Mr. Nye's question was, were there any complaints about Airbnbs that we've approved in the past? So we've approved a number of these in the past, and that was the specific question, not about the neighborhood in general. So while we appreciate your concern about the neighborhood.
So that's a home out of Texas that this lady has complained about, and I just asked her about it. She says they say they don't know who the management is. So what happens? It continues.
I'm sorry.
So she's had complaints she's made, and he's saying he's never heard a complaint. Now,
A home out of Texas, what do you mean?
the people who own the house across the street with 4 cars in the driveway that are having, I guess, garage sales every weekend are owned by somebody out, an LLC out of Texas. And I've been told they're bringing people in out of Texas. I don't know.
Is it possible that's a rental property, not a BR or VRBO or?
Either way, don't the same rules apply to any property that they not park on the sidewalks? And
But that's a problem with the police, not with us, this board. You're addressing the wrong people relative to those issues.
well, I disagree.
If I may speak, I think we need to stay on point to the topic at hand, which is
Right.
1146 Alnetta.
That's what we
Thank
need
you.
to do.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, you do control the zoning, and you do control whether you continue to have transients moving in and out of our area, and whether there's going to be theft. You know, a monitor or a voice monitor may not keep you. Who are these people moving in? And if they steal from people, they get drunk and terrorize something. I don't know. It's not expected. I don't expect any of that. But the question is, you're saying that's a police issue. Yeah, because you allow all these people to come in and do this. Now, a rental property, you probably have no control over, right?
Correct.
I don't know if it's a rental. I assume it is. But we have no control over the rules that are being violated by a rental property, much less someone who's transient that's in and out. So those are my comments. I don't think you should allow it. I don't think it has any merit just because they want to come into town once in a while, that they need to be using it as a rental property for profit. Now, if it's a monthly rental, that's different. They buy the house, they improve it, people live there. You get to know the people. So I think they're apples and oranges. So that's my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal?
I don't know.
Please step forward, ma'am. Step forward to the podium. State your name and address, please.
Nancy Borak,
And your address, ma'am.
1177 Joetta Drive.
Thank you.
And I've lived there since 1989, and it's a quiet neighborhood, and I've always felt very safe there. I also will comment on the house that he's referring to with the 4 cars in the driveway. My daughter, who's...
I'm sorry, though, with this, we're trying to stick just with this 1146 only.
All right. Well, I guess I was late to the meeting and I don't know all the facts, and probably I shouldn't even be up here. But short-term rental, these are homes, these are homeowners, these are people that are settled. You know, I'm not crazy about people moving into the neighborhood that might be there for a week, 2 weeks, a month. That sounds suspicious to me.
I'm sorry, ma'am, were you sworn in?
No.
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so
I
help you
do.
God? Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Please go ahead.
I guess I need a definition of short-term rental. I mean,
That's,
I can give that as a tax accountant. Anything under 30 days is short term in which you have to charge sales tax.
That's also what's in the law.
If you're going to speak, please speak into the microphone at the podium. Thank you. Oh, wait, it's on record.
Short-term rental is also the definitions found in our zoning resolution.
it's
Okay.
30 days per resolution.
okay.
Please go ahead.
I guess I just always thought of this neighborhood as settled, and I think a lot of the people that live there, my neighbors, have been there for years and years and years, and I'm a little bit apprehensive about people coming and going in the neighborhood and not knowing that. You know, we've got some drug problems in Anderson Township, and, you know, I don't want any part of that for my family or my granddaughter. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please step forward, state your name and address.
Constance Rosenfeld, 1160 Alnetta. I do have a couple of concerns. One being the parking situation is already a nightmare. The school is at the end of the street during the school year. There's only parking on one side, frequently, meaning 2 times a day. I cannot get in and out of my driveway without somebody trying to hit my car, trying to get in my driveway. We have a real big problem with all the cars being parked on my side, which would be the house in question, also that side. Is there a plan for keeping the amount of vehicles off the street? You know, it's just difficult. You can't get it out. The second thought I had is about the 3rd bedroom. That house is a 2-bedroom house. I believe 982 square feet, a third bedroom. Has there been a check for building codes whether or not that third bedroom can be allotted in the basement with the small, I believe it's a 1 by 2 foot window, whether that really applies to a third bedroom, whether that's an egress or not? If it's not, it can't be a third bedroom. That is a concern about having that many people in 2-bedroom house. The party crowd, I'm concerned about that. What's the appeal for Alnetta Drive? Okay, there's Kings Island, there's some concerts. We missed the big Swiftie deal, which was probably a good moneymaker there. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of appeal. We do have several rentals on the street. Primarily, it's been a good situation. We've had some drug issues with some neighbors to the right of me and to the left of me. But I am concerned about 1 or 2 day rentals, people coming and going that we don't know. A lot of people on that street live alone. They're single homeowners. I don't know if they bought this outright. What does the mortgage company say about that? Are they allowed to rent this as more than a single family home? But mainly my concerns are people coming and going. The parking situation is a nightmare. Is there going to be a hot tub? Is there going to be a pool put back there? What kind of additions are going to be made to this that make it an appeal? If you cannot rent that property, who is it going to be rented to? High school girls graduating and having a party? I don't know. Those are the kind of concerns I have. So I'm not really for that. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm Bonnie Chandler, 1112 Alnetta. I've been there since 1995. I have a couple questions. Who is in charge of actually approving the rentals online? And I don't know how to address that to Mrs. Schaefer. So is it going to be her, or is it going to be someone in town? And the other.
Can you help me understand what your concern is there?
So my concern is, if it's going to be rented to families, how do we know it's a family? And if we have a party, and I'm looking down, I live a couple houses down from the house in question, who do I call? Because maybe I can call the police, but if I see a pattern where I'm seeing parties a lot, then can I call the Schaefer family and, complain? Because I think I need to know there's some accountability. The reason why the rental house that we're talking about with the 5 cars is coming into question is because there hasn't been any accountability. I live across the street from that house. Oh my gosh, I've called the police 2 times. I've spoken to Mr. Springsteen. And, that's kind of why our hackles are up, because we're not sure who to call if things get out of control. I've stayed in Airbnbs, I love them. A lot of times they're condos by the beach, but the suburban areas are kind of like, they're in and out. These are families. There's children across the street. I don't know. I mean, I'm not really happy with that situation. So, but I would like to know the accountability factor. How do we address problems that come up? So, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Ma'am, please come forward. State your name and address.
My name's Lucinda Ash. I live at 1088 Alnetta Drive. I understand this is beneficial to the owners. As a property owner, my father was an architect and was on this board years ago.
He would flip out today if he saw this going on in the neighborhood. This is an old neighborhood that's designed just for property owners. I understand your situation. I know you're moving. If I was in that situation, I would sell my house and benefit that way instead of making the neighborhood pay for this situation. I can understand that you're going to build another bedroom. I was in that same situation years ago in the basement, and it's very hard to get bypass the codes on that situation. I'm not going to go into it, but it's very hard for that situation. I'm concerned that this is a family neighborhood. Kids are running around. You're talking about people that are coming in for 1 or 2 nights. They're not going to have kids. They're not going to be interested in the schools. They're not going to be interested in socializing or making improvements in the house or the neighborhood. I think this is a major concern that you need to seriously consider. I know it's beneficial to the owner, but sell the house, bring somebody else new in, instead of making the neighborhood pay for this.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Steve Holder. I live at 1121 Joetta Drive. I've lived there since 1993. I just have a couple statements here. Like, long-term rentals, of course, aren't actually the best idea for our neighborhoods, but, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world either. I have 2 rentals across the street from me, and the neighbors there are usually pretty decent. You know, you with the long-term rentals, you at least get to know the people a little bit, and you get to kind of have some camaraderie with them. With a short-term rental, you're never going to know these people. You're not going to know who they are. You're not going to have any idea, and it's just an in-and-out thing. The other thing is about 8 years ago, there was a rental a couple doors down from me on Joetta. And unfortunately, it was rented to 3 gentlemen. It was a long-term one, but they just used it as a party house. You know, all they did was come in, party. On the weekends, there would be beer bottles scattered throughout my yard and my neighbors' yards, and it was just horrible. And I don't understand how that's going to be controlled in this situation. You know, how is, for rental agreement violations, how is this going to be handled? How is this going to be controlled? The property manager doesn't even live in the neighborhood. So how are they going to know this is going on? I really don't think this is going to enhance our property or our property values at all. I think this is going to actually drive it down. Also, as far as cars, you know, we already have enough cars that are parked on the street right now, and we're trying to keep it open for emergency vehicles, and I just don't think this is going to help, because how are they going to determine, even though in the rental agreement it says 2 cars, how can they enforce it? They can't. There's just no way. The other thing is about these other properties. You said there hasn't been any complaints. Have you checked the police reports to see if there's complaints? Because I imagine they don't come to you, right? But I bet there's probably plenty of police reports out there about these properties. So how can we add another problem to the list when we don't even know how the ones that are existing are faring along here? So I really think we should really consider that this is probably not really something we need to add at this time until we can understand exactly how these other properties are going, because there's been a lot of testimony here that has said there's a lot of issues out there. Also, if the property owner can't rent it, what's to prevent it from going on Airbnb? And it just becomes a big party house. And then we're all frustrated in the neighborhood. And then I do have one question. Is there any benefit to Anderson Township from this being a short-term rental? Do we get any tax from this? No idea?
I'd say no.
No?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay. Okay.
Have you ever stayed in an Airbnb?
I can say I have not. But, you know, in reading a lot of articles online, there's a lot of people that complain about them and say that they're not going to do them anymore or rent them anymore because they say they see how it drags the property values down in the neighborhoods. because of all the issues. Thank you for hearing me out.
Any questions from the board? Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this appeal? Please step forward, ma'am. State your name and address.
Leslie Hare, 1121 Joetta. I've lived there for approximately 20 years. What I hear is it's a safety concern. As you've all heard, this is an old neighborhood. We have young people come in, they have children. I personally walk in the neighborhood at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I have no fears. When we have transients in the neighborhood, I will not feel comfortable doing that. There's no way you can control that. I don't know how the owners can vet the renters. I've stayed in a B&B. No one does a police report or a police check. You can't discriminate as a renter. As owning an apartment building, if someone meets the credit checks, you can't discriminate for their age or anything else. So they're going to rent to whoever can pay, right? They do have no control. Yeah, you can put some things to see what's going on, but who's monitoring that? Not to mention, as everyone else has said, the parking issue. There's no way people who own the houses there park in the street. People who don't care, transients, are going to do whatever they need to do. Are they going to have friends over? I think the type of people here, this neighborhood is a neighborhood of old families, young families, kids. What is the draw for an Airbnb? It's not a downtown place where there's bars. It's just an old neighborhood. There's no draw for B&B customers. What the draw is there just down the road? Coney Island, River Bend. Talk about concerts, alcohol, drugs in the area possibly. Belterra, casino. River Downs. Those are all safety concerns, and there's nothing that the owners can do to vet the people that are transient in our neighborhood. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to the appeal? Seeing none, does Mrs. Schaefer wish to address any of the testimony made previously?
Sure. So I know parking is an issue. The main reason that we're getting cameras installed is, well, I guess it's twofold. One, to ensure that no more than 6 people are entering the property. Also to ensure that the cars are properly parked in the driveway as required by the contract. If we see more than 2 cars on the driveway, or if we see cars on the street, then yeah, we absolutely will have our local property manager, or we'll contact the people directly. The thing with these third-party applications like Airbnb is that they are based on ratings. And if you get poor or negative ratings, you won't be able to get future bookings. I don't mean that myself, I mean that goes both ways, both the renters and the owners. So if we see people that are not listening and not following our rules, then we give them a poor rating and they won't be able to make future Airbnb rentals. In that same way, we get to approve and deny renters. So if somebody requests to stay at our house, but they have a poor rating, we have the option as owners to say no thank you, and we do plan on doing that. That is also how we plan on ensuring that people are actually visiting family. That is the draw. The reason that we want this house is to enable other people who are from Anderson and moved away and want to come back and visit their family. Likewise, grandparents that have moved away, maybe to Florida, and want to come back and visit their families. That is our desired audience, and that's how we're planning on maintaining that. Additionally, with Airbnb, you have to be 25 to be on the platform, so there's no risk of teenagers renting unless they're doing it through their parents' profile, which again would be in violation and again would lead to negative outcomes for those renters. The other question is how will my neighbors acknowledge if they see something? And I know that this is for you, but am I allowed to address the people directly?
By addressing us,
okay,
you are addressing them.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that we have always very deeply been concerned about not having poor poor performance or poor people stay, sorry, I don't mean poor financially. I mean bad behavior people staying at our house. We highly encourage all of our neighbors to contact us directly or contact Chris, our local property manager, if they're more comfortable. Prior to contacting anyone else, obviously we don't want to get people in trouble and get people involved, and if there's anything that we can do, we want to do that, and we want to be available as often as we can be. So we did put, I believe our contact information was in the letter that was sent out to everybody's house, and that was, I believe Chris called and asked if that was okay, and I intentionally left it in there because I want my neighbors to contact me directly. I am not just somebody that has no interest in this neighborhood. I have a great deal of interest. This is where all of my family is. It's where I'm from, and it's where I will continue to visit for a very, very long time. And I care deeply about maintaining the nature of it. I think that was everything.
Questions from the board?
I have a question. One of the issues we heard was complaints about parking. Your application says, among other things, oh, I don't have it on the right page. There's something about parking in your application.
It's like I think it's the first point. Yeah.
You understand that they're prohibited from parking the front yard setback. They have to essentially have to park in the driveway or in the garage behind the front line of the house. You understand that? And so I'm saying this, I guess, as much to the room as it is to you. You understand as the owner that if someone violates that condition, what the repercussions will be for the renter, I don't know, but your ability to continue this as a short-term rental will be affected, right?
Absolutely, which is why we're motivated to make sure that it's maintained.
So, for example, if you rent it to someone and they try to pack 8 cars in the driveway and they're all over the street, someone makes a complaint with the township issues a citation to you, and you may lose your permission, if you get it today, to operate a short-term rental in the future. You understand that?
Correct, I understand.
Okay.
Very clear, yeah.
And, by extension, the same applies to more than 6 people in the house, if that's the limit, or, parties are shorter than 2 nights, whatever it is. If these are the conditions you're proposing, and those are incorporated into a permit if you get one, violations of those could result in revocation of the permit to operate as a short-term rental.
Yes, I understand, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Is this the only rental property that you own?
Yes.
And there was mention of there being 2 bedrooms in there, a 3rd bedroom. Is there a 3rd bedroom planned, or?
We would like, the basement's unfinished currently. We would like to finish it. We understand for real estate purposes, it's not a conforming 3rd bedroom because of the egress window situation. However, Airbnb does not require that they are conforming bedrooms.
And you also mentioned you provided a letter to your local neighbors. How many houses, or what did you consider local in distributing that letter?
That was through you guys.
Through the Ohio Revised Code, any property within 200 feet of their property needs to get notified.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just wondering.
Could you please come to the podium?
One question I have is the smoke alarm and monoxide alarms in a rental situation, is it required that they're hardwired in that situation? With our homes, because of most of them built in 1954, mine is, even though my electric has been upgraded, and I don't know if this house has electrical upgrade to 220, I do not have hardwired smoke detectors. So I'm wondering, in a rental situation, if that is a required situation, or if that is goes against like the fire codes to not have that.
I think the answer to that question is that they're not a separate set of regulations for rental properties.
There is not?
My understanding is that the regulations your home is subject to are the same for everyone in the neighborhood.
Interesting. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing on case 16.
Question? I raised my hand. I asked a question.
Please, sir, come to the podium. Please limit the question to the
It'll be very quick.
to the case.
So in the case of a rental property that's used for like a hotel, you don't have to meet the standards of a hotel? Do you have to have sprinkler systems?
I'm not a building inspector, and I'm not here to answer those questions. What I can tell you is that, to the best of my understanding, the standards that apply to 1146 are the same ones that apply to 1152 and 1132, 1126, and
Okay.
1112, and so on.
So if this is a rental property that they're using as a business, I can close my office here and just start using my home as a CPA practice?
Sir, we're here to address an application for a short-term rental at 1146. Do you have any testimony about that issue?
You've answered my question.
I have one question here. If the rental agreement is violated and it's determined it's being violated and they know it's being violated, what are they going to do about it and how long is it going to take? You know, if they've rented the property for 5 days and they've got 8 cars in the yard and they have parties going on every night, what are they going to do about that? How long do we need to suffer through this until something's done about it?
I don't know that we have an answer to that question. That's the Did you want to?
No, I don't have
reissue
an
your
answer.
motion?
Yeah. Are there any other questions from the floor?
Any further questions?
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing on case 16. I knew it.
I'm getting my steps in. Has there been any feasibility studies in Anderson Township done on STRs?
That's actually something I want to address in our so once the testimony is done,
Okay.
we're going to deliberate amongst ourselves. We're going to talk about some of the issues like that, and that's something that I want to actually bring up.
Okay.
But for now, do you have any testimony, any evidence that you want to put in?
Not yet.
Okay. Not running out of time.
Just to also make a note that we're not a governing board, and so that would be something that would have to be handled by the trustees. And so, long and short is that all we are here to do is to make a small decision relative to a rental, a change of designation on a piece of property. That's it.
So what if it doesn't work out, what are the steps taken to?
Go to the township trustees.
Yeah.
You got that? That's where you go, because they're the governing board here.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public hearing on case 16.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion to second to close the hearing. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Mr. Halpin.
Aye.
Mr. Sion.
Aye. With that, our public hearing is closed. We will deliberate amongst ourselves. You're welcome to stay and listen to what we are saying here. Somebody wish to start us off?
I'll start with a few thoughts. We've had, half a dozen or so of these over the last year or so, and we keep seeing the same issues come up time and time again. People are saying, I'm worried about parking, I'm worried about not knowing my neighbors, I'm worried about safety, I'm worried about a bad element, I'm worried about parties, I'm worried about things getting out of control. I think those are all completely reasonable concerns. There's not a lot that this board can do about some of those things. The trustees have made a policy determination that short-term rentals should be permitted in the township, subject to certain conditions. The conditions are set out in the staff's report. The applicant has to submit evidence showing that they'll comply with those conditions. The applicant has submitted a packet of papers. We've heard testimony from the applicant about how they intend to comply with those. Parking is a big one. The applicant says, we're going to require people to park in the driveway within the front yard setback, so, 40 feet from the road or whatever it is, 30 feet, I forget for the neighborhood. If they don't comply with that, then they're in violation and they could lose their license to operate a short-term rental if they get it. So, these are rules that the trustees put in place. We're bound by that. We're here to decide simply, have they checked those boxes the trustees said they should check? So, obviously I know the board knows this. I'm saying this to the public as much as anyone. And I guess I'm saying this to staff too. These issues keep coming up. I don't know how on board the public is with the policy decision the trustees have enacted. So that's a political remedy. It's not one that, we're an administrative board, not a governing board. So there's not a lot we can do about that. With respect to parking, though, the applicant does have a plan for that. They say in, page 7, maximum of 2 vehicles any time. They'll be prohibited from parking in the front yard setback, and so on. They're going to monitor that with cameras. I know the neighbors will be monitoring it too, and they'll be reporting it to Chris and Steve and Paul and Sarah and anyone else, I'm sure. Safety, knowing your neighbors. There's not a lot we can do about that. You either know your neighbors or you don't. I've lived in my house for 10 years, and I don't know all my neighbors. That's on me probably. I understand your concerns. I'm bound by what the trustees have told me. I think the applicant has checked all the boxes here. They've got a plan for parking. They've got a plan for monitoring people. They're requiring 2-night minimum stays. I think that's a reasonable requirement. This is where they plan to stay when they come back in town. They have no interest in letting it get out of hand. And if it does, there'll be an administrative complaint and perhaps a violation, and they may lose their license. But again, as far as we know, that hasn't happened to any of the ones we've approved so far. I think we've approved every application that's come in over the last year. So those are my thoughts. I think I would approve it subject to the conditions, subject to conformance with the conditions in the application, including the on-site or the local property manager and so on that we typically approve. Sorry, that was a lot of word salad. Happy to hear what anyone else says.
I tend to think the same as you, and she's doing this is a minimum 2 nights stay. So if you rent this thing out for a year and you get a bad tenant, you're stuck with them for a year. Someone comes in and rents it out for a weekend and they put 4 cars in the driveway, then she's in violation and whatever happens. But at the same time, those people move on, and then you bring someone else in that may, or probably will, more often than not, will abide by the rules. So I'm just like the gentleman said before. There were a house down the street from him with 3 guys in it, lived in a year, and all they did was party and trash the place. Well, if that happens, this is a day. That's a year. So what's worse? I think I would be in favor of approving it as well.
John?
I'm for it.
What if it's a sexual assault?
Can we get a motion, please?
Just one.
Mr. Chair, with respect to case 16-2023, I move that we grant the conditional use request subject to conformance with the application dated received on June 14th.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Mr. Halpern.
Aye.
Mr. Simon.
Aye. So with that, the appellant, the application is approved. When will you have a final approval for them?
We'll be in contact tomorrow or early next week with final details.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Maybe have we got it right?
Motion to adjourn?
I understand, fully understand, especially if it's something that you're unfamiliar with and it's changed. I just want you to know that like I am a real person. You're not just like some stranger.
We can all go together.
I don't have to be faster than all of them, I should be faster than you three.
It won't be me.
You do. Well, unless you have some family in town, you guys need a free place to stay. You need to make sure overflow.
Sure.
That one, if he wants to scratch out his name and put yours. We're not sure what proper procedure is.
And then on our DOE documents, I will sign my name and then say for, or like on behalf of. I can do that if you like. Thanks.
I have almost been hit twice trying to back out my car. Just to get onto Alnetta. The car, I mean, the house next door to where I live, as everybody knows, is I have the four cars in the driveway. Like it's the last car was blowing.
That second Alnetta in the paragraph there, that's misspelled.
She got one of those dogs, so I haven't been able to go anywhere since. Two puppies. Oh, okay. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So,
You need to contact Sheriff Department. Anything in the public right-of-way is Sheriff Department. That's sidewalk, street. Yeah.
Do we need a second space after that first sentence there, or is there already one there? Right after use and said in the very first sentence. Yeah, does that have two? Yeah, I think that's you're using two consistently.
That doesn't sound like it's already okay. Some minds are made up. And you say call the sheriff, right?
I'm sorry?
You say call the sheriff about the.
So anything in the public right-of-way, which includes sidewalk and street, that's out
Go
of
down further,
planning and
please.
zoning jurisdiction.
I know that's the jurisdiction.
So-
I thought you guys could help us.
Yeah, you have to speak with the Sheriff Department.
Then why don't we all stop them? I mean, why-
I can't speak for them, ma'am. You have to contact them. Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, I feel like you.
It's okay, no, this is informative for people. Yes, this is very informative. Yep, take care. Thank you for coming by tonight. Okay.
fine with it too.
Something that specifically came up.
Is that in section F?
F. In F, yeah. Garage or driveway and outside the front yard setback. Parking will be prohibited within the front yard setback. Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess H is kind of redundant, isn't it? Okay. We switched to capital letters for M and S. I don't know if you care. I just noticed. For V, do we want to say that owner contact information, right after compliant, first word after compliant, owner contact information? Okay, I'm good with all that. Good with all that.
Just need to fix that, yeah.
And the condition is substantial compliance with the application received June 14th, right? SUBSTAN TIA.
I was homeschooled, bear with me. It's AIA.
Yeah, he's got it.
Mr. Chair, with respect to case 16, I move that we approve and journal our decision.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Nye.
Aye.
Mr. Halpin.
Aye.
Mr. Sion.
Aye. Adjourned.